I can't claim to be a LARP expert. I only did my first LARP last year, actually. But I did design a game called Zombies Run, where you run around in the real world, and alternate reality games. And so for the last year and a half, I've been writing a book about the history and the rise of immersive art. And in particular, about the sharp rise in the popularity of the term immersive and immersive, experiences, which many people kind of like fold LARP into, whether that we should be doing that or not. And it's fine. A common theory behind like the appeal of immersive experiences is agency. Like people get to have the agency in immersive experiences in LARP that they don't have in real life, and in modern life in particular. And this is kind of like a tricky argument because, like, do we really have like more agency in life like 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago? Like, do we actually have less agency, or do we just feel that we have less agency now? But what is pretty clear is that, like, compared to traditional passive media, like immersive experiences are often sold on giving you more agency than watching TV. So like imagine, oh no, here we go. Imagine that you're seeing someone going to an immersive theater performance, or going to like a sort of Star Trek style experience, or even like the Star Wars Galactic, Star Cruiser. You've got like so many things you can do. So when you're in like immersive theater, you can decide where to walk, right? You're not sitting in a seat like you are now. You can decide which rooms to go into, which characters to follow, what things to look at. You can open different like drawers and things like that. You've got a lot of agency there. Here, look at all the agency you have, all these different buttons you can press, and aliens you can negotiate with, and different like tacks you can take with negotiation. Star Wars, we're going to hear from Star Wars soon. So many buttons, so many screens, so much agency. But then it gets kind of complicated, actually, when you consider like the whole range of different immersive experiences. Like this is a popular Bridgerton experience by Netflix. And in this thing, like when you go there, you have agency in deciding what you're going to dress up as. You can decide where to look and walk around, but you can't affect the plot in this. You can't become the queen. You don't actually have as much agency in here. And as part of the book, I interviewed a lot of people, and I interviewed the founder of Punch Drunk, who makes a lot of immersive theater. And he told me, actually, there isn't really real agency. You're basically a floating camera in a lot of these like immersive theater shows. You don't have much control, but you can just choose where you stand to watch it. And so, the appeal, I think, I don't think agency is a nice word, but we kind of use it for too many things, actually. So I want to introduce a new word, sovereignty. Longer word. And so the appeal with sovereignty is that, it's not that you have unlimited agency, it's that you get to make the decisions affect you. And this word, we normally like associate with like monarchs and with kings and with queens and with like gods, things, bodies that can do whatever they want within their own realm. And like no one can question the king. And so like 100 years ago, around then, economists came up with this idea of the sovereign consumer, which kind of like, not everyone can be a king, but everyone can be a sovereign consumer. And the idea is a sovereign consumer is independent of external domination. So if you go to the supermarket, you decide what to buy, there's no one telling you what you can buy. You can buy anything you want. Their choice is good because it's rational and utility maximizing. So if you go to the store and you're like, I just want to eat ham all day, all week, because then an economist would say, well, that's the right choice for you because you must really like ham, right? So therefore it must be obeyed. No one can stop you from buying all this stuff. And it's unrestricted by religious or political norms or majority will or higher authority. So a doctor can't come in and say, it's bad for you. Or a religious person can say, you're not allowed to have ham. And so this is, the sovereign consumer is kind of really at the heart of what a lot of people think is best for free market democracies, right? It sort of basically personifies an individualistic society. It's a kind of play to win, you know, of society. And this is obviously like a fiction, right? Like, you know, because people aren't perfect. Their minds get swayed by advertising, you know, all the ham advertising. Their choices are constrained in reality, right? You know, you can't actually buy something that doesn't exist, hasn't been made by the market. And it doesn't recognize that some people have more resources than others. But the idea kind of lives on, and it's sort of become allied to this philosophical idea of sovereign agency. And so sovereign agency, two even longer words put together. And this basically states that our actions that we do are all kind of self-generated, and they're product of our will, and they're under our control. So what this means is that everything that happens to us, if you believe in sovereign agency, everything that happens to us is a product of our decisions. So if we're poor, or we had a bad experience in a game or a LARP, it's our fault, actually, because like you are a self-made person, right? And if you have a really good time, if you become rich, it's because of your decisions, not because of anyone else. It's just because you made a good decision. And so, like, a lot of immersive experiences, and like particularly like video games, which kind of qualify, put you in like a little universe, a little bubble where everything is under your control, and you don't need to worry about other people except to just like kill them, basically. And so when I think about sovereignty in video games and immersive experiences, I'm not saying that like you always win. It's more that it's wholly within your own hands whether you win. It's not anyone else's. And so this is kind of nice enough as a solo power fantasy, but it's trickier when you have other people around that you have to deal with. And people do like having other people around. They want to have other humans around, not just AIs, but actually their friends and family around. But when you're with other people, like in an escape room, you can't just do whatever you want. You actually have to go negotiate about what you're going to do next. And so I think, you know, this obvious kind of contradiction, you know, was really sort of summed up by Hannah Arendt. Sovereignty, the ideal of uncompromising self-sufficiency and mastership, is contradictory to the very condition of plurality. No man can be sovereign because not one man, but men inhabit the earth. And so this leads us to her ideas lead us to this idea of non-sovereign agency, which means that our agency in the world is always dependent on other people. It's always distributed by other people. If you try and do something and just like no one follows you or no one that even acknowledges you, then you don't actually have any agency, right? Your agency depends on other people. And what this means is that we bear much more responsibility for what happens to us and what happens to other people than we think. Even if we don't intend to do something, like it still matters what we do. And so in order to sort of get through this, we have to become much more comfortable with contingency and uncertainty. We need to have the courage to build spaces where people can try these things out. And it's very different from immersive experiences selling this like power fantasy of sovereign agency, of unconstrained action, where no one can tell you you're doing it wrong, where your decision is always the right one. But there are immersive experiences that we're seeing in immersive theater outside of the LARP world, where they're kind of running into a problem, because the more people they try and fit into a real world environment, the harder it is for them to get those people to play together nicely while still giving them agency. You know, if you think about going to an immersive theater show and people just elbowing their way to the front, trying to get picked for the one-on-one, that doesn't work, right? So I'm not going to say that Nordic LARP has actually solved this, because I don't think it has. But I will say that I think it is the immersive art form of all the ones that I've been studying that has done the most thinking about it. So I invite everyone to think a bit more about the word sovereignty. Thank you.